Well, it's March. Isn't it amazing how our Mother Nature has brought us this beautiful storm? And finally, at the beginning of March, we've got a little bit of cold weather, like, oh my gosh, are we going to get winter finally? And now here it is spring, just around the corner. And so I thought that it would be fun as we are going into spring to look at the teachings that David Richo has in his book, The 5 Things We Cannot Change, and the happiness we find in embracing them. This book starts, very apropos, I believe, with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept those things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so what he tells us at the very beginning is, now what are those things that we can't change? So he gives us a listing of what he calls the 5 givens. Everything changes and ends. That's the one we're choosing today to look at. Everything changes and ends. Things do not always go according to plan. Life is not always fair. Pain is part of life. And people are not loving and loyal all the time. Most of us, I think, in our heads can nod and agree to every one of those. Well, yeah, that's true. Of course that's true. Well, I know that, naturally. And yet, when something happens, an event happens, or a person does something that's not on our plan, wasn't in our agenda, wasn't on our timeline, what happens? We can throw a hissy fit. Maybe we wouldn't do it externally. Maybe we'll just do it internally. But we have this tendency to get, all upset because this happened or this didn't happen and that didn't happen. And there are literally things in life that we can't change. People will do their thing. I mean, how many of us in life have ever gone through a divorce? You can't make somebody love you. How many of us have ever known an individual we have loved and they have left this earth plane and passed on? I imagine all of us have had that. We can't change that. We're not going to stop that. Richo says, he has a section entitled, What Makes Us So Controlling? Because that's what it's really about, bottom line is. We want to be in control. He says, we control because we are afraid of grief. Control is one of our favorite ways of running from life as it is. Control is actually an illusion. We don't let go of control. We let go of the belief that we can control. So true, isn't it? So he reminds us not to become a CIA. That is a critic, an interpreter, and an advisor. Now, I have asked you, as we're in this period of Lent before Easter, that you consider, as I'm working on, consider giving up criticism for Lent. Now I'm going to add 2 more to the mix. So let's see, what is giving up being a CIA all about? It means that we give up criticism. And number 1, you're going to give up criticism and starting with yourself. Really, that's, to me, where I anyway, start with my criticism. If I'm not criticizing myself, I'm not going to be seeing it in others. We give up interpreting. Interpreting. What does that mean? Well, it means that somebody does something and, I interpret what that really means. Well, that means in my head that's what I'm interpreting it. That doesn't mean that's necessarily what's going on in their head. And of course, then the last one, advising. How many of us are such do-gooders, and we want to help that person so much by just letting them know this is what you should do. Or if we're trying to get away from the word should, we'll say, well, this is what you could do. Yeah, they're the same. Don't let it. Unsolicited advice is what this is talking about. If someone really comes up to you and asks for your advice, granted, give it to them. But we don't need to do it unsolicited, in unsolicited ways. So then he says that in all of those CIAs, really, what they're doing is masking and covering up our true nature, which is love. And so he gives us the 5 A's of love. So those 5 A's of love are attention, acceptance, appreciation, affection, and allowing. So let's look at those a little closer. So when we give love our attention, we give our attention when we give love. What does that mean? We focus in on that individual. If someone's in front of us, we focus in on them. We give them our attention. We don't have in the back of our minds another agenda going on. We give them our full attention. Love is acceptance. We are accepting that other person as they are. We're not trying to change them. We are accepting them as they are. And we're accepting a situation as it is. Remember, one of our wise folks in this congregation has told me more than once, if there's a situation going on that was not to our liking, then it's either a lesson or a blessing. And it's there for us to grow, to learn, to become more spiritually mature than we are at this moment. That's what this life is all about, is evolution, of raising up to a higher level because it's infinite. The 4th one is love is appreciation. We naturally, when we see something that makes our heart just prompt with love, we're so grateful for it. Like, yes, oh, thank you. I love this. Of course, I'm so appreciative of it. I love my chocolate. I'm so appreciative. No, it's just... And affection. Affection is truly an element of love, that we're tender, that we are affectionate, that we're attentive to whatever it is that we love. And the last one, I think, is maybe one of the most difficult ones, really, is allowing. Love allows. When the toddler is learning to ride the bicycle or, the little tricycle that they're riding or whatever it is, and the parent has to step back and let them maybe fall. That's what love does. Love allows us to learn our lessons, to go through those things, because love knows what we are at the depth of our being and knows that we can handle it. In our Science of Mind teachings, we say it's not what happens to you in life, but the way you respond to it. Because life is going to happen. But how are we going to respond to it? How are we going to respond to these changes in life that we didn't ask for? The divorce, the death, those types of things. To me, what we are here to do through that process is to surrender to it, to let go of this ego sense that me, myself, and I have got to figure this all out. Rico says, the phrase accepting the things we cannot change makes it seem that we accept things only because we cannot change them. Actually, once we understand that what happens beyond our control may be just what we need, we see that acceptance of reality can be our way of participating in our own evolution. Serenity comes not only from accepting what we cannot change, but from giving up trying to be in control. I think that was very critical point that he made, is that we're never in control. We want to be. Our ego sense wants to be, but it's just a belief. It's not a reality. I'd like you to look at all the things in life and see what these givens are that he gave us, right? These 5 givens. He said the word given has 2 meanings. It is a condition that cannot be changed, but is also something that has been granted to us. Only amid such exacting and challenging conditions could we evolve. Can you think about that? If life is just humdrum, just going on and on and on, what happens? You become bored. It's like, really? And probably our psychic, if that does happen, our internal little psychic says, okay, it's time to shake it up a bit. He said the givens of our life are gifts because they are the elements, are the ingredients of character, depth, and compassion. What does it take to find the gift? Cease our attempts to control or head them off. All of us are going to have something in life that we didn't think that we invited consciously. And that's the exact moment when it gives us the opportunity to surrender, to let go, to become more aware of what is the gift that is here for me in this experience. He also points out the fact that as a human, we're spiritual beings, but we're having a human experience. And as part of a human experience, there is this process called grief. We have all of these notions that, okay, this is what I want, and expectations, and of course then with our teaching, what we think about, we bring about, and so we have these experiences, we've manifested all these wonderful things, and then this cyclical thing, it naturally comes to a close. It naturally changes. It naturally comes to an end. And so what we want to recognize is that this is a grieving process to let go of whatever was. That's perfectly natural to have a grieving process. Grieving process recognizes that, I am saddened by it. We don't want to ignore our feelings. The feelings are very important because they tell you where you're at. And so you want to honor them. You also don't want to wallow in them. As part of that grief process, you recognize it and you know that it's time to move through these stages of grief. He says, unless we override our numb our feelings, we can automatically feel sad, angry, and afraid when loss occurs. It's very natural. These are the feelings of grief that help us work through the unappealing facts of deaths and ends. Since every one of the givens in life represents a loss, grief work is a skillful means with which to face them all. It is up to us to trust that mourning is precisely how we resolve our losses and move through them to what comes next, the evolutionary style. I worked with a whole booklet called the Grief Workbook. And it had quite a bit of processes that you go through when you have an event in your life that you are grieving through. And so there's lots of things that we can consciously participate in to go through that grieving process. And, in our Science of Mind teachings, we know that there is only the now. That we live in the eternal now. And in that eternal now, it's predicated upon what we thought, what we expected in the moment before, in the time before. That our work is in the now, yet what we are experiencing is based on what we have put into it mentally. Okay, does that make sense? And so what we want to recognize here is that we are very, very powerful beings. And to allow ourselves to think and bring about what it is that in the next moment is going to bring me joy, is going to bring me love. How can I express this love? Basically, that's what it's about. We are this love. Infinite love. How can I express more of this love, this allowing, this appreciation, this acceptance? Let me play with how that's going to come up in my life. The interesting part about it that we all know, and I'll just let you in on a secret, this power of love not only is what we are, it's what everyone and everything is. It's around and through all. It's infinite. It is changeless. It is our anchor. It is what we are. We can never get away from it. We can never be separated from it. Now, this is an interesting thing because in this book, he brings up this point. He has a subtitle. It's called Nothing Separate. That makes sense to me. But then he gives us a quote. He says, Aldous Huxley, remember the author, Huxley? He said that the phrase I am has two errors in it. I gives the impression of separateness. Am gives the impression of permeance. Now, I had never thought about that phrase in that respect at all, because my background is always I am is the name of God. And if I look at it in this sense, that I is separate, okay, I mean, I'm trying to go with the flow here. What's he talking about here? I think he's talking about the fact that the I is the individual, separate ego self, I. I believe that you can look at the I from a bigger standpoint, from a broader standpoint of all-inclusive. It doesn't have to be separate. There's one, I. And then the other point he makes is am. Am, he says, seems to be permanent, like this is it. Yeah, but if you recognize the fact that this is a universe that is flowing, that is infinite in nature, the am is always going to be in this moment. So yeah, it's about as permanent as the life-evolving process is. So I stand firm on the fact that I am is the name of God, the name of love, the name of our nature. Because we know that after we say the words I am, whatever we say afterward, you better know that that's very important. We are powerful. But it's a challenge to remember to look at it in the more universal. To look at that I as all, and the am as ongoing. It's not just a little separate thing. I don't agree with him. So when he's talking about this life-changing things of the five givens, again, those are everything changes and ends. Things do not always go according to plan. When I hear that one, I always kind of think as a kid, we make these plans of having a picnic, and then it starts raining. Or you're on your picnic and the ants come. Or whatever the case might be. And to me, that's why we live in this kingdom on earth, because it's going to show us how much we can handle, how much we can adjust, how flexible we can be, how innovative we can be in our thinking, in our response to life. Pain is part of life. Things are going to happen that make us sad. Things are going to happen that we wouldn't have chosen. It's true. People are not loving and loyal all the time. That's right. Every single one of us have not been loving and loyal all the time. And when we look back at those times, we say, I would choose to do it differently next time. Help me to remember that when I'm in that situation the next time, I can respond from that stance of love. But what's so fun is now he says there are 5 givens, but then there are 5 other givens. Now those are the kind of challenging ones. I like to listen to these 5 givens. We experience bliss. I bet every single one of us can note in our minds when we have experienced bliss. I don't think this is an unknown to any of us. All of us have experienced bliss. Our hopes are sometimes exceeded. How many times do we pray? We say, we know what we want, we're going to manifest this, this, and this, and this, but then we add this or something better. Thank you, God. Throw something better in. Things have a way of working out. I can remember, this was many years ago, I was attending a Unity church, and there was a prayer partner there working with me. I don't even remember now what the situation was. I think it was probably financial, was my guess. I don't know. But so we were talking, and she made the comment to me, that God has gotten you through everything that you've ever gone through in life. What makes you think that it's not going to happen now? Things have a way of working out. Maybe not always on our time schedule. And the last of the other delightful givens is miracles of healing happen. Miracles of healing happen. Those 5 givens are provided by grace. When we align our lives, our thinking and our feeling nature with this grace, with this love, remembering that that's really the truth of what we are and the truth of what everyone is, that grace fills us, and we are acknowledgeable of it. We're cognizant of it. That we're saying, yes, this grace is my life. We accept it. And, and it's a challenge, because this ego keeps coming up. This ego keeps talking to you all the time about all these negative things, and it's confusing. We want to remember the truth of what we are. We are love. Truly love. And that love is nurturing. It's sustaining. It gives power. It pulls us through all of our trials, one way or the other. I invite you to go through your trials not kicking and screaming, not trying to be pulled and pushed, but go with the flow of what's going on at the moment. It's called letting go of the illusion that you have control and allowing this gift of life to come through us at every moment. I want to leave you with this thought. Actually, it's more than a thought. It's something that maybe you'll come to your mind more than once during this coming week and help put you through it. I surrender to the power and the presence of God within me. I surrender to the power and the presence of love. I surrender to the power and the presence of love within me. I surrender to the power and the presence of love. Let things change. Let things go. Let things end. It's okay. Because you know what? You're going to be supple and let love have its way with you. And it's divine. Grace be with you. Namaste.